Hello again, audio geeks. I hope you're all well. Now, let it not be said that I ignore your comments. So recently, a few of you have asked me to stop reviewing true wireless earbuds. You might be right on that front, especially if they're edifier ones. So I won't wax lyrical about these, which are the Sony LinkBuds S. Sorry, the case is a bit nasty there. But these are my new favorite Android IEMs. But I'm not going to talk about those today. But no, because I've also had quite a few requests to review new hyped Chi-Fi IEMs, as I know a lot of you look at these sets as your first step into audiophilia. So today I have not one but two sets of affordable IEMs to look at. Now, if there are two trends from Chi-Fi manufacturers at the moment, the first is to try and make great value IEMs with excellent sound and bring them in at a really low price, which is a fantastic thing, obviously. The other trend is to call all budget IEMs zero, which is definitely a thing. I'm not sure whether that's a good or a bad thing though. So today I'm going to be looking at two IEMs, and they were both sent to me for review by Shenzhen Audio. Thank you very much, Shenzhen, and of course the usual disclaimers apply. Shenzhen haven't paid me for this review, they're not sponsoring the video, they haven't seen the contents of the video before you, blah blah blah. I'm sure you're bored of hearing all that, but it's important to say. So here we have the $15 Tanchjim Zero and the $49 much hyped Truthear and Crinacle collaboration, which is also called Zero. Now, at the outset, I'd like to say that these are both pretty good IEMs at their respective price points, and both are well worth your attention. However, don't get carried away. The old adage still holds, i.e. you get what you pay for. Neither of these are category redefining superstars such as the 7Hz Timeless at its price point. But they do both illustrate just how far ultra-affordable IEMs have come in the last 12 months. Okay, so let us start with the Tanchjim Zero. So $15. They look and feel pretty budget, that's for sure. The cable is really thin and sadly is non-removable. You can see it's fixed to the shell. The shell themselves is really quite tiny. And it's a bullet style IEM. It's obviously made from plastic with a little metal faceplate there. You might just be able to see that. Now, these are not meant to be one hooked around your ear, which is a shame because that's the way I like to wear my IEMs, but I found them pretty comfy nonetheless. And in particular, due to their absolutely titchy size, now it probably doesn't come across well on the video, but these are tiny. I found them to be really ideal for listening whilst lying in bed at night. Now, in the box, you do get a few tips and a basic cloth pouch. And the box is actually refreshingly small and eco-friendly. I'm not sure about the anime girl on the cover. That seems to be another trend in Chi-Fi IEMs at the moment. So let's get into the listening then. And my first impressions are that these are very neutral sounding IEMs with a clean mid-range and plenty of treble presence. This is borne out by looking at the frequency response graph, which rather helpfully is printed on the back of the box and seems to correlate well with reviewers who've done measurements. So as you can see, the bass is certainly not particularly elevated, and some of you might find them a bit lacking in that bass department. However, the bass is fairly decently textured and you'll be able to pick out some details. So if you take a listen to something like the Chemical Brothers' Out of Control, the intro has some really deep bass pulses which you can hear through these, but you can't really feel in the way that it's meant to be felt. And if you do like to feel the visceral throb of bass in EDM music in particular, I'm not sure you are going to find these particularly satisfying. Now, the mids are very pleasant. They are fairly neutral, but they have enough body to give vocals in particular a bit of warmth and a bit of weight. Now, these don't emphasize vocals strongly. It does lead, however, to a well-balanced presentation, which makes something like Taylor Swift's Willow sound mellow, but her vocals just lack a little bit of bite in the chorus. I do, however, like the treble on these. It's slightly elevated and extended, but not too shrill. There are occasional hints of sibilance, however. Occasionally, some of the treble elements can be a little too prominent in the mix, such as on Foals Mountain at My Gates, where the hi-hats in the verse, when they kick in, they're just that little bit too noticeable for my liking. Now, the fact that the treble is well extended does mean that the Zero has a sense of detailing, which is rare in IEMs at this price point. But how about the technicalities? Well, the timbre is good and natural, this being a single dynamic driver set. The sound stage is nothing special, it sounds fairly closed into your head as you'd expect. The imaging is pretty average, you can't really precisely pick out where all the various instruments are coming from. So overall for me it's one for fans who prefer more neutral tuning, and for that it's pretty good at its price point. My main criticism is that it sounds just a little bit too laid back. There isn't enough of a sense of liveliness to the overall sound, and although neutral, I would say that this errs on the side of slightly boring, rather than something like the Etymotic ER4, for example, which is neutral but with a sense of excitement and massive levels of detail retrieval. But then again, they cost about 20 times the cost of these, so that's perfectly fine. So yeah, $15, you can't go too far wrong with these. Okay, so we're on to our second set of Zeros, and here we have the much hyped Truthear Crinacle collaboration. Now you might have already seen Crinacle's video on these. It's an interesting vid, as all of Crin's are. I'd recommend that you go and check it out, obviously after you've finished watching this video. In essence, these are a new $50 set from Truthear, which is a newish company, and they feature a 2 dynamic driver design featuring 8 and 10mm drivers. Now what's a little bit different about this is that there's a crossover built into the IEM which allows only the lower frequencies, sub 100 Hz I think, to reach the larger 10mm driver, in essence making it a tiny subwoofer to increase both the quantity and the quality of the bass response. But we'll see if that approach has paid off in a minute. So once again, the package comes in this sleeve adorned with another anime girl, and in fact, before I show you what's in the box, Shenzhen did send me this acrylic anime figure. There she is, she's called Virgo. Now, I'm afraid, and you know, I'm betraying my ignorance of all things anime cultural here, I have no idea what all this is for. I'm not into anime and I'd never use this personally. If any of you watching the video want this, then send me a message on the Discord, and as long as it doesn't cost too much, I will send this to you. I hope you like it, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, in the box, you do get some bump there, which you won't look at. You get a nice selection of ear tips, predominantly silicone ones, but there are a couple of foamies right at the bottom. You know how much I like my foamies. There's a Cybermen eye sockets in which the IEMs came. And you also get this quite nice PU case, which, you know, is always nice to have. In terms of the IEMs themselves, I think they feel very well made and pretty sturdy. Quality control feels good for a new company. I like the violet, bluish, sparkly faceplate. It feels plasticky with the Perspex shell. There's quite a long and wide nozzle. The cable thankfully is detachable this time. It's a standard 0.78 2-pin connector. I won't pull it out because then I'll spend the next few seconds frantically trying to plug it back in and you'll all get bored. Comfort-wise, these look pretty bulky, but actually wearing them, they are fairly light and comfortable to wear for extended periods. Okay, so let's get on to the sound, and I'll get the iPad out for this one. These are tuned to the Harman 2019 in-ear target, which I'll show you here. Now, if you don't know what the Harman target is, it's based on research from Harman International, and it's meant to represent the frequency response target that a large sample of people found to be the most pleasant to listen to. Now, as you can see, it's not really a neutral target. It has an elevated bass and elevated upper mids and extended treble. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the Harman target. I find it to be just a little bit too bassy, not particularly, just a tiny bit. But my main problem is that I think it makes vocals sound a bit thin and a bit forward and shouty at times. So if we bring the Zero graph back in, you can see that it adheres fairly closely to the Harman target reference. So just bear that graph in mind as we talk about the sound of these. In fact, I can probably make it bigger. There you go. So let's talk about the bass, this bit here. And I think it's truly excellent for a $50 IEM. Now you might expect that subwoofer will just whack up the volume of the bass, drowning out the rest of the mix, but that's definitely not the case here. So yes, you do get a slightly elevated mid bass, which I'm pointing at here, and you do get some sub bass roll off. It's in fact a little bit below the Harman target at that level, but that doesn't mean that the bass is stodgy or overwhelming. What you do get is an almost visceral rumble and slam from that sub 100 Hz dynamic driver, and a fairly quick liquid mid bass whose rapid decay makes it sound clean. Now this approach works particularly well on modern dance music. Something like Biceps Aura, for example, comes across really well, as does the bass on Charlie XCX's new album. It's nicely propulsive and it makes the music sound really lively. Now I think that budget bass heads will really enjoy the Truthear Zero. However, I think this kind of bass boost, if you like, works less well on acoustic music, jazz in particular, where it can make the acoustic double bass sound a little bit unnaturally elevated, which is not a good thing. Now, looking at the mid-range, it is for the most part quite neutral, but the slightly recessed lower mids just there, that does give the whole mid-range a slightly thin feel to it. So Kurt's vocals on Nevermind, for example, sound just a little bit too thin for my liking, as do the really lovely guitars on Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot album. Now you get a good sense of texture from the various mid-range elements, but electric guitars can sound just a little harsh and grainy. The upper mid-range is what will divide opinion though. That's this bit just here. Now it's very forward, as you can see, which makes female vocals in particular stand out, and they are at times, to me, just a little bit shouty. Yep, there's that S word, shouty. Now you might not find it to be too bad. I guess it depends on the way that these interact with your ear canals. But for me, yeah, there is just a tiny bit of shoutiness at times, not always. The treble on these is well controlled, albeit slightly bright. There's a good presence and decent amount of air, and overall, again, it's really pleasant for a $50 set. So overall, the tuning makes for a really lively and dynamic listen, possibly a little bit fatiguing for me over a long period of time. The timbre is okay, although slightly on the thin side, as I've already said. I'd certainly like a little bit more note weight and body for listening to acoustic pieces. Sound staging is pretty good, as is imaging. So overall, the stereo field has a degree of depth as well as width, and it's quite easy to pick out where the individual instruments are coming from. So overall, I think the Truthear Zero is a solid recommendation, particularly for those of you who are really into EDM. It makes for an exciting and immersive listen for this kind of music. If your library is more orientated towards classical or jazz, you might find the slightly thin mid-range to be a little bit lacking. So look, in summary, I can't fail to be impressed by how good these cheap IEMs are getting. And whilst neither of these are earth-shattering, they're both well made and they both sound good for their price points, and the Truthear in particular offers something a bit different to the usual kind of slightly bass boosted neutral tuning that you get. Both solid recommendations. Not sure either of them are worthy of an award. No, actually, go on, I'll be generous. I think the Zeros, the Truthear Zeros, are worthy of the much coveted Audio Fixation Bronze Award. So there you have it, guys. Have you picked up either of these sets yet? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Thanks again to Shenzhen for sending these out to me. And again, if anyone wants the anime girl figure thing, hit me up in the Discord. That's it. Take care. See you in the next one.